I'll make you famous.
We work for Mr. Tunstall as regulators. We regulate any stealing of his property. We're damn good, too. You can't be any geek off the street. Gotta be handy with the steel, if you know what I mean. Earn your keep.
Regulators! Mount up.
And welcome to another edition of the Political Regulators. I'm your host, Hassan Giordano, a.k.a. Mr. Politics, back in the building. And as always, it wouldn't even be a show if I didn't have my co-host by my side, holding it down. She, of course, is the former mayor of the city of Baltimore, none other than former Mayor Sheila Dixon. Good evening, Madam Mayor.
Good evening. I almost didn't make it. I had a very early meeting this morning, so I left the office at 3:15 to go to Drew Hill Park to run and walk, and so many people out there. I kind of got carried away, and I was like, "Oh shoot! Let me look at the time so I can hurry up and get home." And I stopped by the pool and talked to some young people there, and people are using the pool. It's nice, so people using the park. Well, ever since COVID, people have been using that park. Everybody, black, white, everybody's been using it.
Well, everybody's just happy that they're out again, that they're free, and they can enjoy
Right,
life.
but actually during COVID, Drew Hill Park was used more than ever. Very diverse. Tennis courts, people having picnics, people just hanging out. Because we were out there running and walking during the entire time, and you could see the change of people really using the park.
Right.
Some people discovered the park and didn't know that it exists. What was in Drew Hill Park?
Because of COVID.
Hey, whatever
Trying
it
to get
takes.
outside and have some
Many of us knew the park, was in Park Pool, our whole childhood. Now they got fancy. The pool is nice.
Well, that's what's up. I was talking to my co-workers the other day at Registered Wills, and one of them had mentioned that they didn't know that there was two pools at Drew Hill Park. One that all the blacks used to go to, and one that was not for blacks back in the day. It was kept up back there where they used to have the baseball players go play and things, and that's what that was keeping away. It was kept away from the people didn't know about it.
Yeah, the black pool, they have a plaque there, but what they should do, because they have tennis courts back there as well. They should open that pool up, one, just tell the history of it, and two, if, particularly older people who want to do laps, because now at Park Pool, they call the country club, where on the weekends between 9 and 12, it's adults only. They have aerobics classes, things like that. But they should open that other pool up as well. Then people could do laps, train.
Absolutely. Well, tonight, family, we have an extremely informative show for you. We will be joined by a gentleman in a minute who is well-versed in both politics as well as law. And tonight, he's going to discuss the latter as we dissect the recent decisions handed down by those 9 justices that sit on America's highest court, the U.S. Supreme Court. From Miranda to prayer, guns to abortion, voting rights, and everything else in between, we're going to break down all the information that's coming out of Washington, D.C. First out, though, we want to remind the viewers, if you are a candidate for office, we have 2 shows left. Next week is the last show before early voting starts, and then the week following will be the final show, because 3 weeks from today, July 19th, is the primary election day. Remember, we will not be on July 19th. We will come on for the only time that next day on Wednesday, July 20th, breaking down all the winners and losers. We'll have some of the winners join us on the program. Even some of the losers might slide past and thank y'all for coming out to vote. But we're going to definitely break down all the races and what happened on July 20th, not July 19th. We'll be out and about on July 19th at the polls, and you should too. So if you are a candidate, you want to come on and get your message out last minute, right before the people go to the polls, make sure you email JJ, our producer, at info@dmvdaily.news. DMV Daily News, and we'll make sure to get right back with you and get you on the program. Now, if you want to join in tonight's conversation, ask us the question, ask our distinguished guest the question. Make sure you leave it on the chat in Facebook and or YouTube live streams. JJ will make sure that he'll monitor them and get us the questions in order for us to hopefully respond within a good period of time. But tonight, family, we definitely want to discuss some of the more serious issues that are happening in this country. And joining us is a young man who was born in Washington, D.C., but he's a Baltimore native, we call him. He grew up, graduated from Baltimore City College High School, where he was actually the first African-American class president. He went on to attend the illustrious Howard University, where he organized his first political campaign. Plenty followed, trust me, after that, for a female classmate who was running for homecoming queen. He served as student body president and chair of the D.C. Students for Civil Rights before earning his law degree at Columbia University. He served on the Baltimore City School Board for 6 years, handled dozens of high-profile cases, including representing the Black Panther Party in a murder case that he ended up winning. He became the first African-American law professor at the University of Virginia before serving and coming to serve as professor at the University of Maryland School of Law. However, he is best known, at least by me and plenty of people that I know, as being a political mastermind, using his genius to get countless folks elected to office, including the former state's attorney for Baltimore City turned mayor, Kurt Schmoke, when he first ran for mayor back in 1987. He has devised thousands of candidates around the world, wrote a book on the making of a Supreme Court justice, outlining Thurgood Marshall's first few years of practicing law. And if you haven't gotten the book and read it, make sure we'll get you that information tonight from the professor so you can go online and get it. It's a great read. He's here tonight, family, to break down the recent decisions handed down by the U.S. Supreme Court in the past week. Professor Larry Gibson, welcome to the Political Regulator, sir.
Welcome. I learned something new about Larry. I didn't know his first campaign was a beauty queen at Howard.
Georgia Pearson for homecoming queen. That was my night in the fall of 1960. That's at Howard University. But one correction, I was the first African-American class officer at City College, but I was the vice president, not the president. But I learned an awful lot from that first homecoming queen election at Howard University.
I believe you.
And plenty of cases to follow. So how long have you're down at the University of Maryland School of Law in Baltimore? You've been down there for how many years?
I just finished my 50th year as a law professor, but 48 of those have been at the University of Maryland. I began teaching at the University of Virginia Law School, and after 2 years of being in Charlottesville, my wife and I realized that we were urbanites and came back to Baltimore. So I've been on the faculty there for 48 years. There have been a couple of years when I took a leave of absence, such as when I was the Associate Deputy Attorney General of the United States in the Carter administration. But I have taught a lot of lawyers. I enjoy starting each class by asking, is there anyone here whose mother or father I've taught? And I've just far identified 28 students where I've taught 2 generations. There may be more than that, but there are 28 that I know about.
Wow. Hey. Well, you definitely love your work that you do, being there for 48, going on 50 years.
Well, I've been there 48 years, and every year my students are the same age.
They never get any older.
They don't get any young, huh? Yeah, that's what they do.
All right, so the Supreme Court has issued quite a few opinions over the past few days. Of course, we saw the leaked opinion that came out a few weeks back, about 2 months ago, that hasn't happened in the history of the courts prior to that showed a certain leaning toward the case that we're going to talk about later in the program. But then, so the past few days, we've seen everything from school prayer to abortion. But today, before we came on air, I know there was something that you were discussing that really got to you. And after looking at it, because that slipped past me until recently, the Supreme Court blocked a lower court order today that required Louisiana to create a second congressional district where black voters are in the minority. They granted an emergency request for the state's Republican Attorney General and Secretary of State, who said that the legislature cannot draw two minority districts without segregating voters primarily on the basis of race, which they said would be unconstitutional. This overruled a lower court judge's ruling requiring the creation of that second black district, throwing the election process into chaos. Professor Gibson, what does this mean for Louisiana voters, for black voters, and this country as a whole?
Well, today, this court has continued its aggressive assault on African Americans' voting rights. I have taught election law for about half of those 48 years that I've been a law professor. And so it's something I've paid a lot of attention to. Of course, the important part of that has been the Federal Voting Rights Act. And one thing that it did was to state that states could not use redistricting and other kind of means to dilute the political power, the political options of African Americans. And that's exactly what this Louisiana legislature did. This Louisiana Republican-dominated legislature used the redistricting in a state where the population is 1/3 of the electorate, to pack all of the, or most of the black voters, many of them, into one district that essentially a majority black district, and to then cut up the rest of the black voters into the black vote into little small pockets. So there's really only one congressional district where there's significant African American influence. The lower federal judge looked at this, found that it was obvious of that what had been done, and had ordered the state to redo the map and to create at least one more predominantly black district. The Supreme Court today, the same 6-3 conservative majority that we had in several recent cases, including the abortion case, knocked out that lower court's order. This is not only the lower court, but also there'd been an intermediate appellate court. And so the election will be held in Louisiana with that gerrymandered map with only one black district. This is the second time that they've done this year. In January, they did the exact same thing with the congressional map in South Carolina. South Carolina has 7 congressional districts, and more than 1/3 of the population is African American. And the lower courts there, these are federal courts. I believe in South Carolina, it was even a Republican appointed judge that said this was so obviously discriminatory, had ordered that the maps be redrawn, and the U.S. Supreme Court in February put that holding on hold so that the election will be held using the racially gerrymandered map. So there have been several other decisions of the Supreme Court relating to voter ID and other kinds of steps that have been taken, which are an assault on voting rights. This is particularly a matter close to my attention because my personal hero in the law, as many people know, is Thurgood Marshall. Thurgood Marshall really thought that of the various civil rights battles that had been fought, that his most important work was not the school desegregation cases, it was the voting rights cases. And he really thought we had pretty much won that battle. Of all the recent developments in the law, I think he would be most disturbed by the fact that we've had to now refight this voting rights issue all over again. I really think he thought that was one battle that was done. That was won and that was done business. But no, this Supreme Court is on the war path on many fronts to set this country back. And we had another development today.
So, since the Supreme Court ruled that it was not gerrymandering, at this point, there's nothing else that can be done.
Well, there is actually going to be another hearing, but on the matter, but there's no reason to expect that's going to produce any different result. So what it means, it is likely that in both Louisiana and in South Carolina, these elections will be held, but using the maps that reduce the power of influence of African Americans, but also the Supreme Court's decision sends a signal to other legislatures to do the same thing. There were earlier decisions of one affecting North Carolina, where a whole variety of anti-voting measures had been adopted by the legislature, and a federal district court and a federal appellate court had held these measures unconstitutional. The federal judge, in her opinion, said that these measures had been designed with, using her words, surgical precision to reduce, end quote, to reduce the impact of the black vote. And the Supreme Court reversed the lower court decisions and let all of those measures go into impact. So yes, most of what these legislatures have done will be used in this round of elections.
And speaking of North Carolina, folks, one of those decisions recently handed down by the Supreme Court was Berger versus North Carolina State Conference of the NAACP, which challenged a recent state law instituting voter IDs at the polls, which was passed by the conservative Republican-dominated legislature in North Carolina. It was vetoed by their governor, but that veto was overridden by the legislature. Now, this particular decision didn't speak to voter ID being unconstitutional, but this rather was dealt with because it was very interesting. The state conference, the NAACP, sued the governor and the State Board of Elections as a collective board, as a state agency, whose members are both appointed and removed by the governor. Well, the NAACP alleged that obviously the law offends the federal constitution. The board was defended by the state's attorney general, who also was an independently elected official, but the attorney general at the time was a former state senator who didn't believe in the voter ID law, and in fact filed a declaration in support against a legal challenge against that law. So the Speaker of the House and President pro tem of their state Senate moved to intervene to argue that the attorney general, who's usually the lawyer for the governor when sued in the state, should not be arguing the case since they didn't actually believe in the argument they were supposed to make. And so that was what that whole, if you follow me on that one, issue was. But they will hear a following lawsuit in the same matter regarding voter IDs at the poll and some of the other measures that Professor Gibson said passed this very Republican-dominated North Carolina legislature. So before we go to the other one, Professor
let me
Gibson,
just comment on that one.
Okay, yes, sir.
That one I know a lot about because North Carolina was kind of ground central about 3 or 4 years ago on trying out these Republican voter suppression methods. And it just so happened that year I was a visiting professor at North Carolina Central. They have what they call the Charles Houston Chair that's occupied by a legal scholar for years. So I was watching that very careful. That's the one where the judge said that the measures had been done with surgical precision. And so you're absolutely right. They threw the kitchen sink. Excessive purges of voters, voter ID provisions, reductions of numbers of voting days. They did everything that they possibly could, and the Supreme Court allowed them to do so. So that was like 3 years ago. So we should have, I guess, seen this coming, but it's continuing.
Yeah, I guess it is frustrating. Well, it's just like what happened in Baltimore County, and then they went back and tweaked the district, but that was just unacceptable.
Well, we're certainly not going to get any relief in this arena from the Supreme Court. We're going to have to use other methods, and we'll talk later about the powers that we have, that we still have, that we can use to bring about change. Because although many of these voter suppression methods are being implemented, it's still, or at least for a while, still an awful lot easier to vote than it was when we started. I mean, we of course have gotten accustomed to, and we need to have early voting and voting by mail and drop boxes. But we elected an awful lot of people with none of those.
Yeah.
All of the election was on one day,
Yeah.
a handful of hours, and so I don't want our people to get frustrated and, oh boy, they're suppressing our votes because we don't have as many early voting days. We don't have as many drop boxes. We elected an awful lot of good people to office with none of those.
Yeah, we sure did.
Yes.
And more people came out during those times.
So here's my question, though, Professor Gibson, because many people believe that the 1963 Voting Rights Act, those things set in motion certain protections for minorities and their voting rights. And we saw that for 50 plus years. And then the Supreme Court ruled years ago that eroded part of that Voting Rights Act. That I think a lot of people didn't realize. Are we going down a slippery slope and even having protections as minorities moving forward?
Well, it began the process of reducing the impact of the 1965 Voting Rights Act when it eliminated the pre-clearance procedures for the South. Under those provisions, states which had a tradition of suppressing black voters had to get approval of the Justice Department before certain kinds of changes could go into effect. The Supreme Court declared that provision no longer in effect, and in a naive opinion, predicted, well, this is not going to have any great impact. This law was passed decades back, and things have changed. We've got all these black elected officials and all. But immediately after that decision, Shelby v. Holder went down, the states started to enact these changes in state law without the preclearance obligation, and it's been a continued process since then.
Yeah, we've seen Georgia, southern states, Georgia, Texas, Florida, enacting some of the most draconian voting rights laws that you can think about since the 1960s that they can get away with. So before this week, last week, the major discussion that came out of the Supreme Court was on a decision by the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Broom. It was a 6-3 opinion where the court held that New York's proper cause requirement violates the 14th Amendment by preventing law-abiding citizens with ordinary self-defense needs from exercising their Second Amendment right to bear arms in public for self-defense. Well, how is that going to have a major impact on our way of life, especially since states, about a dozen or so states, including Maryland, have very similar, if not exact, laws to New York's law that has now been overturned.
Well, obviously, it's going to increase the number of people carrying firearms, the number of people who are injured and die as a result of firearms. But what it showed to me was the aggressiveness of this court. It's almost as if this court thinks that its time in power is limited, and they need to right now, in a very aggressive, hurried fashion, set the clock back as fast as they can. But here is another situation where the court is being intellectually dishonest. If one reads the Second Amendment of the Constitution, there's nothing in it about bearing weapons for individual defense. It talks about the need to maintain a well-regulated militia, because very early in our nation's history, we were hesitant to create a national army. And so the idea was national defense would be handled by ordinary citizens who would have their muskets at home and would assemble when needed to defend the nation. It's only decades later that the Supreme Court converts that into a right to bear arms for your individual protection. And so we have sometimes the courts looking at history and saying, well, this right didn't exist back then, so therefore you don't have it now, which is what they said about abortion, when in fact, at the time of the enactment of the Second Amendment, there was nothing in it that spoke in terms of bearing weapons, either concealed or openly, for your individual personal protection. It's just intellectual dishonesty here. But as I said, the effect of it will be serious, and this is one where it's not going to be possible to fix it by federal legislation. This is going to require either an amendment to the Constitution or a change in the court that interprets the Constitution again. I suspect that the abortion matter that we will discuss later could be corrected by a national statute, a national law on abortion. But with respect to this firearms matter, we're going to need to change the court, and ultimately, that's a matter that we really can do.
So when you say change the court, at what level you talking about
We
changing?
need to increase the size of the court to at least 12 judges. The court size can be changed by an act of Congress. It doesn't require any constitutional amendment. The court's membership has been changed on more than one occasion, as low as 6 judges. And my suggestion is that we raise the membership of the court to 12. The Constitution provides that those already on the court have life tenure, so there's no possibility of removing them without a constitutional amendment.
So I know Biden, during the campaign, Biden did not support that. But also, if we were going to change the court, which I think at this point we probably should, is that we better hurry up and do it, because we might lose control of the Congress in this upcoming election.
Well, we won't be able to change the court until we change Congress. We need to enact a couple of more Democratic senators. At the moment, we have, in my view, 48 Democratic senators and 2 persons who are pretty much independents. They meet with the Democrats for purposes of determining the leadership of the various committees, but it's not reliable Democrats. And we can, this election year, we have a real unique possibility, if we organize and use our numbers and voting strengths, to pick up at least two more senatorial seats just from Republicans who are retiring. You got Pat Toomey in Pennsylvania, who's retiring, Richard Burr in North Carolina, Rob Portman in Ohio, and Roy Blunt in Missouri. Those are all doable situations that where we could elect Democratic senators. Now, we would need to hold on to the senators that we have.
Right.
There are a couple of others that are stretched. I mean, Val Deming is running a good campaign against Marco Rubio, but that's a tough one. But those four that I mentioned are all situations where, with enough effort, we could elect four Democratic senators. I mean, there are races that we need to hold on to, and such as in Georgia, the Herschel Walker is challenging Warnock, but I think that Warnock should be able to hold on to that. And there are a couple of others in Arizona where there's a potential close election. But first step is to increase the number of voters, of Democratic voters in the House of Representatives, and pick up at least two more senators. Two more senators would then give us 50 reliable Democratic senators, and then maybe even Senator Sinema and Senator Manchin might become more reliable. I don't know whether that's likely with Manchin, and he comes from a state that's overwhelmingly a Republican.
Yeah, no, I don't think so.
But we have the potential, if we get focused, not get diverted by a whole lot of other things, on what needs to be done, which is increase the Democratic majority in the House and elect two more senators. Now, once you have that majority can do the first step that's necessary, which is to get rid of the filibuster. Once you get rid of the filibuster, there are lots of things you can do in this matter of voting rights. You could pass the National Abortion Rights Act. They could start the process of adding District of Columbia as a state. I mean, you remember, it takes only a vote of Congress and a signing of a bill by the president to add a state. It doesn't take a supermajority of anything. But with the Senate filibuster rule at the moment, it takes 60% of the 60 votes to get anything done. But once the filibuster is over, that process, which has already been started in the South, in the House, passed many times, of electing, of adding the District of Columbia as a state. That process needs to be completed.
I don't know what happened.
But the problem that seems that I'm worried about when it comes to getting rid of the filibuster is when you get a Republican majority, then they're going to use it to their advantage and shove everything they want down the throats of the Senate with that 50-vote majority. So it's kind of like damned if you do, damned if you don't.
So we have to make sure we organize and don't let that happen. Every poll shows that on the important issues in this country, a majority of this country is more attuned to the position of the Democrats. It's a matter of us organizing and getting that vote out. And the Republicans see that, and that's why they are undertaking so many efforts to destroy this country as a democracy, because democracy doesn't work for them in their view, and will work less for them in the future based on the population trends. All the population trends show that the percentage of Americans who identify themselves as white decreases every year.
So, question, before we get to the last two decisions, all of these justices took their seat on the bench, but before they did that, they went before the U.S. Senate's Judiciary Committee. They rose their hand, and because the Senate has advising consent process, of course, they rose their hand under oath and swore to the American people and to these U.S. senators that they believed in precedent, that they would not tamper with precedent. And precedent to the family meaning laws that had already taken place, that have been put on the books, that the Supreme Court has already adjudicated. And yet, now they come back, and many of these, Amy Barrett and quite a few of them who took that oath, have now basically lied. So the question is, can anybody take them to court, file charges, or try to overthrow them from the Supreme Court? Is there a process for lying under oath, which, just like lying to Congress, which they did, is a convictable matter?
Well, first of all, I'd like to point out that something's happened to your sound that has become much more difficult to understand what you're saying. But you're right that these people are dishonest and they lie. But no one should be surprised. The Trump appointees were all supplied the names to him by the Heritage Foundation, who screened these people for solid commitments that if they reached the Supreme Court, they would vote to reverse Roe v. Wade. Everybody knew that. Those senators who now profess a surprise knew that. Donald Trump knew that. And so we know that in addition to all the other negative with this group, we got at least the last three justices, maybe the last four, were people who under oath lied. And that is another factor that in these written opinions, one can easily point out these sort of inconsistencies in what they say in one opinion as opposed to the other. They're simply result oriented. The first result was to get on the court, say whatever they needed to say to get on the court. Those senators knew that. The president knew that. And so we have, unfortunately, at the moment, a Supreme Court in which a significant number of them are people who committed perjury.
Yeah. And they'll do anything they can to get in the power position. So a decision that may have sweeping implications for the separation of church and state came out yesterday on where the Supreme Court sided with a former high school football coach who lost his job initially for offering prayer at the 50-yard line after games, despite objections from the school district because students felt compelled to take part. In a 6-3 majority opinion, Joseph Kennedy's prayers were a private matter, as ruled on by Associate Justice Neil Gorsuch, and did not amount to the school district's endorsement of Christianity. The three liberal justices dissented, asserting the majority had effectively abandoned a 1971 precedent that had set the standard for how such cases should be resolved. How is this going to affect religious matters in regards to the separation of church and state moving forward? Or is it?
This is going to be a fascinating one to watch because as this court is aggressively tearing down the long-standing barriers between church and state, I'm fascinated to watch what happens when the religion is something other than Christianity. I'm looking forward to the case when that recent decision that talked about government money being used not only for religious-based schools, but also to teach religion. What are the federal courts, include the Supreme Court, going to say when the religion is Islam, or it's a Sikh religion, or it's some religion other than Christianity? That that is a place where I suspect that we're going to see the hypocrisy and the intellectual dishonesty of what these courts are doing. So the jury is out on this one, and where the battle is going to be is when we start having religions other than Christianity to take advantage of these decisions.
Yep, that I see that as well. So yeah, we'll see we'll see a change when that happens. It will be and it's I just can't get over all these decisions in the last week. It's hard to take, and on top of it, to try to educate people, particularly the layman who's not an attorney, who doesn't, who's not knowledgeable as much, and they don't understand the relationship between everything that's going on and how their vote is really significant and it's going to make a difference.
Yeah, that's the sad reality. Is a lot of them aren't familiar, and I'm glad we have a professor here to break this stuff down. So the last one before, then we're going to just talk about some of the Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization. 6-3 opinion that we saw coming for weeks now based off the leaked memo that went out. The court reversed and remanded to the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, held that the U.S. Constitution does not confer a right to abortion, overriding Roe v. Wade and Casey versus Planned Parenthood, and the authority to regulate abortions now rests with the state. What kind of implications is this going to have across this country?
Well, to me, the most fascinating aspect of this has been the multiple opinions written by the court and the contrast between Alito and Judge Clarence Thomas's opinion.
Yes.
Alito is the most dishonest of those two. And he says, well, all we are doing is dealing with the matter of abortions. Nothing we're saying here has anything to do with anything else. Clarence Thomas let the cat out of the bag. In his opinion, his concurring opinion, he says, well, it's abortion now, but the same principles that are being articulated in here also apply to a whole bunch of other rights, including the rights to birth control.
Yeah, contraceptives, and same-sex marriage.
Same-sex marriage, same-sex intimacy.
Just right, but he didn't say anything about interracial marriages.
Yeah, and so I was a little surprised because about that, but he told the truth, and it's alarming, and it should alarm people. And here is where I think some things are a blessing in disguise. Now, this is a terrible opinion. Lots of people are going to be injured by this. But from a political perspective, it just might be the step that changes what would have been the outcome in the November election. Up until this decision, it was fairly clear that the economy and inflation were the factors that were going to dominate the November elections, and that was ominous for Democrats. The party in power almost always loses seats, particularly when there's a negative economic news. And just 2 weeks ago, that's what the news was all about. Even though most of the inflationary steps, developments were not caused by actions on the part of the federal government, even though gasoline in the United States is a whole lot cheaper than it is in just about all of Europe and most of the world. Nevertheless, that was what people's focus was on, and even some Democrats were getting confused and weren't sure that they were going to vote for the Democrats, and but that has been changed. Now, how will that change? Stay until November? We don't know, but there's a good chance that it might, especially because of Clarence Thomas's opinion, pointing out that this is court is not finished with some of these other rights, and so maybe more people will understand that it is absolutely essential that action be taken to see that no more of these right wingers got on the court, but that a Democratic majority is preserved. I mean, who knows? In the next 2 years, they may be changed, further changes in the court. Then there's the next 4 years after that. So this, at least for right now, appears to be the energy that Democrats have needed to get away from the singular focus on economic matters. Whether it will hold, we don't know, but it just might.
I hope so.
But do you? I mean, I can see the point in that, and I can see a mass exodus of Democratic women, especially, going to the polls, casting their ballots in November. But I still don't think this is enough for Democrats to hold on to the House or even the Senate, for that matter.
Well, I don't know. There are a lot of Republican women who support abortions.
Yeah,
abortion rights, a lot of, and that's personal now. Some of these other things are distant. This is up close and personal. And then these incoming threats to the use of contraceptions. I mean, and birth control pills. I mean, that's what those cases are based on essentially the same principle. And so these are issues that cut across party lines. And I'm not so sure that it's just women, that it's just Democratic women who understands that their rights are at stake. And certainly it's not just women in the gay rights areas and some of the others areas that now are potentially on the chopping block. This may be, I'm not sure, because everything happens so quickly, and who knows what new issue comes in between now and then. But this is going to be a motivating factor, and it's not just for young people either.
Yeah, I hope that it is a motivating factor. I know Vice President Harris mentioned about the federal government creating centers to accommodate women and individuals, so hopefully we'll see some action and change, because this is just crazy. And
let me explain another threat that people should be aware of. Another reason why we must vote is, I mean, the anti-abortion people aren't finished. They want to pass a law in Congress to make it a national prohibition. There are also laws being passed or proposed in states that will deal with the right to travel to obtain abortion services. You're going to probably see some conservative states passing statutes that try to reach beyond the state or to reach its citizens as it relates to their going out of the state to obtain abortion services. And even what is an abortion and is being broadly defined in some states. Some things that we would call miscarriages, at least, will raise suspicion in certain states, and a simple abortion can become at least something the subject of an investigation, and some law enforcement person trying to find out what were the circumstances of this miscarriage. This is going to affect so many people at so many ages, at so many different categories, and some people of different of different persuasions, that this has the potential of being a significant change in the political landscape. And Democrats need a significant change in the political landscape to control Congress again and to add a few more senators. And once they've done so, there are things that they can do. Get rid of this filibuster, pass a national voting rights uh, uh, act that corrects, changes some of the provisions, deal with the right, what rights were voting, abortion rights, and some of the other things that we've been discussing.
So,
Okay, go ahead.
now, Congress has had two voting rights, the John Lewis Act and then H.R. 1, which was put in by Maryland's own Congressman John Sarbanes, which H.R. 1 basically threw everything in the kitchen sink in the legislation in terms of voting, going at making sure that big money was taken out of it, doing a whole lot of other things besides just a few things. Whereas though John Lewis's Voting Rights Act seemed to have more potential of passing Congress, at least the House and possibly the Senate, got out of the House. It never even got touched in the Senate. Obviously, the president, that was part of his commitment to African Americans is running. And it seems that presidents or even politicians always have promises to black people that never get fulfilled, but they always make sure that they come through for other populations in every way.
Well,
is there
no,
a reason?
no. I don't agree with the premise. They certainly tried, but you only have 48 Democratic senators. You only have 48 Democratic senators and two, I call them independents. So they did just that. Certainly the president tried, and most of the Democrats did, but I do not consider Manchin or Sinema reliable Democratic senators. So the solution to that is not to criticize the president for something he didn't have the votes to do. Now,
he did have
the vote. No, he did not have the votes. He's got 48. You need 50. That's why we need to hold on to the Democrats we have and elect Democratic senators in Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Ohio, and Missouri. To keep saying that the Democrats had control, no, it's not true. We had 48 senators and two nominal, I call them Dinos, Democrats in name only.
But they are Democrats.
The president's responsibility. Those were the voters of Arizona and West Virginia. So I do not accept that you can blame Biden for not passing that legislation. He certainly tried, but the people from Texas came over and talked to Manchin. But when they came over, I said, Manchin's not going to do this. Manchin is not on our side.
No, he's not.
Things like this.
It's all about the numbers. It's like Obama, the first 2 years he had the numbers.
And still
he tried to accommodate the Republicans. I would have just done everything I could. The bottom line, you got to know how to count in any form of politics.
Right. Biden didn't try to accommodate the Republicans. He just
not Biden. No, I didn't say he did.
Okay.
Obama.
I said Obama did.
Obama, yes, he tried. Biden tried to do the right thing, and most of the Democrats did. But in the Senate, and they got it through the House. They got even with a narrow margin in the House. But you can't pass legislation in the Senate with 48 votes.
Yeah, but it's 50. You keep saying 40.
No, I didn't.
And I got you.
I see that. I don't accept that it's 50.
I agree with Larry. The senator from West Virginia is not a part of the Democrats. He does not side with them.
Well, technically, there are 48 Democrats and 2 independents. The independents just happen to fill up to caucus with the Democrats.
Right.
So, but we're talking about two of those 48 is Kristen Sinema and Manchin, who are actual Democrats. Here's the thing: if you're in power, you got to learn how to count the votes. You got to learn how to whip the
You
votes.
can count the
You got
votes
to
and count.
use pressure. Use pressure. Them people are part of your party.
You're not
But
being.
there's some people that you can't convince. And Manchin, you cannot use pressure. He would not bend on anything.
His state is over one of the highest percentage of votes for Trump in the nation. It's a Republican stronghold, and they know in voting for him that he's not a true Democrat. So why spin that? Let's elect some true Democrats.
Right.
Well, dig
It's
up
like the
some dirt on them.
stimulus. It's like the stimulus money. He didn't want folks in West Virginia to get any stimulus money.
All you gotta do is find him doing his dirt and hold that against them. I'm trust and believe all of them got some dirt that they doing. I don't care if they sneak in with a boy or a girl to a hotel across the street. They got something that you can find.
The numbers are right. We can elect. The Democrats can elect senators to replace those 4 of those that are retiring that I mentioned. Definitely can do it in Pennsylvania. Toomey can beat the Oz, that guy. In North Carolina, there's enough people, black and white, to win to take Burr's seat that he's retiring for. Ohio and Missouri are the same situations. It is possible if we start and made that a national focus to go for those 4 seats and make sure we don't lose it in the close ones. You know, we keep Warnock there, and we got a couple of other close elections. Make sure we don't lose anything, and make this abortion rights the center of what the fight is. Nationalize those 4 elections, and be clear that if we get back the Senate, that we're going to have a national Voting Rights Act. Put, as the president has said, abortion rights on the ballot. When you are voting for your Senate in Pennsylvania, that's what you're voting for. And don't get it complicated by any other issues. Or they'll start diverting attention to other things, become a single issue a party, at least in those states where Democrats have a realistic possibility of switching from a Republican senator to a Democratic senator.
So the Supreme Court begins hearing cases again for their new term on October 3rd. It's always the first Monday in October. Are there any cases that are going through the federal pipelines that you've heard of that the Supreme Court has agreed to hear that, or haven't reached the Supreme Court yet, that may make you take pause, that may be the next overturning of precedent or an issue that you feel could really have major implications for this country?
I haven't looked recently to see what they have taken cert in. There are so many voting rights matters. These state legislatures have been busy. They have passed voter suppression measures, and they deal with everything from purging to voter ID to registration to voting days. There are lots of those matters. And what I'm going to be watching is has the recent decisions made the lower federal courts reluctant to do the right thing. Well, we've got a significant number of federal judges that were appointed out of the same process by which the Supreme Court justices were appointed. But let's take even the sort of middle of the road judges. I mean, the Supreme Court has sent a strong signal as to the way it wants to go. And what I'm going to be watching is what do the lower court trial level judges and the courts of appeal judges do primarily in this voting rights area, because there have been so many new state laws put on the books, and almost none of them with well intentions.
Got that right. All right. Well, Professor Larry Gibson, thank you so much for spending your evening with us this evening, breaking down these recent opinions from the Supreme Court. Many of our viewers chimed in saying thank you. You broke it down to them on a, you know, on a baseline base, because a lot of times these decisions and legal jargon kind of flies over the head of the average voter, the average citizen. And so you kind of really broke it down to our viewers. We appreciate that.
Yeah, it's good information, definitely.
Okay, but I'll end with something I've mentioned earlier.
Yes, sir.
And there is no reason for us not to use the political power we have, because notwithstanding all of those laws that I mentioned that are intended to suppress the vote, even if you put all of those into effect, voting is easy in compared to what it was just a few years ago. Young people may not know this, but up until this century, so in the last 20th century, all voting was on one day. There was no such thing as early voting. People having a special hardship or special reason could get a mailed-in ballot, but it required a special kind of affidavit. There was no such thing as a drop box where your ballot could be deposited. You couldn't register by mail. To register, you had to go down to the Board of Election Supervisors. You had to show up there and register. She'll remember we had to fight just to get the board to release copies of the form so that we could take them out to people. Before you had to go down to the elections board. Voting is important, and voting is easy. It's easy with notwithstanding all these measures that have been taken. So let's not let folks convince us that this power that we have is difficult to exercise. It is not, and it's growing power if we choose to use it, and we can. And I hope we will.
Very good point. Excellent point. Excellent. There's no excuse, and you can do it Monday through Sunday. Early voting.
Yeah. Every day. Not only that, it's 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. the same time the polls are open on election day.
Used to be on a Tuesday. Yeah. So no excuse.
That's a little too much time.
And if you didn't get it in the mail, like I registered to get mine in the mail, I didn't get it in the mail, so I'm gonna have to do early voting.
Well, maybe they just didn't get it.
Easy.
I haven't even gotten the sample ballot.
I just got mine yesterday, so you may be getting it today or tomorrow.
Josh's sample ballot came. I haven't gotten it, so.
Well, maybe they took you off the rolls for inactivity.
I don't know why they would. I haven't missed a vote since I was 18.
Oh,
Vote. We can change this.
absolutely.
Yep, we can. I agree. But thank you. This was excellent.
Thank you.
Great education.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Professor Gibson, and we'll make sure to bring you back on to talk about some stuff, especially elections. After these primaries, we're going to break down what happened across the state of Maryland.
All right. My pleasure.
Yeah, they're close. Yep.
Okay. So,
all right, thanks.
Bye now.
All right, now. There you go, family. Professor Larry Gibson, the University of Maryland School of Law, joining us tonight to talk about these recent Supreme Court decisions. Man, how did you feel about when they? We all kind of knew that the decision was coming down with.
I mean, we knew, but when it happened, it was extremely disappointing. I was very upset about it. You know, I don't feel that that the state, thank God I'm in Maryland, and we have certain protections, but I was extremely upset with the ruling and very disappointing. Now, one of the things that I will say, and particularly when it comes to the mindset, like the archdiocese, I can't from Maryland, talked about, well, now here's an opportunity if someone is pregnant, we'll help to take care of that child. We'll provide love to the mother, et cetera, et cetera. Somebody who is raped and then can't make the choice, it's incest. I mean, it's just I still can't believe it, and I don't want to see either side become to the point where they're obsessed with trying to hurt or injure. And personally, I feel if the Supreme Court judges haven't had security up to this point, they don't need that security. You wanted to be a Supreme Court judge. I don't want my tax dollars spending money to protect you.
Right. You chose to hand down these decisions.
That's right.
But no, bro. And, I posted something on social media about guns have more rights now than women do. And to me, this is the ironic part of the whole thing is, so I take from, I personally am 100% against abortion personally. I feel like, I'm going to take care of my responsibilities and, you got into it, but I'm 1,000% against having anybody decide for a woman or anybody what they can do with their bodies, right? And I don't think individuals can't understand that pregnancy just doesn't happen, and it's not always from a loving couple. You have couples who get pregnant or abusive relationships, like you said, who are raped, incest.
I mean, there's so many ways.
Sex traffic, they're prostitutes.
Yeah.
And not to mention, you have individuals who now have to look at the child and see that person in that child for the rest of their life. You don't know what that does to them mentally, emotionally, you know what I mean? Like, you have to see your raper or the person who's abused you for years in this child that you now have to raise, because you can best believe the father isn't going to be there. And I don't understand how these right-wing conservatives, so-called constitutional conservatives, argue about the government should not be involved in their right to bear arms, but have no problem with the government being involved and telling a woman what they can do with their body. Come on.
Right. And I have an issue with that too. I mean, but even with the right to bear arms, in most cities and states where there's right to arm, you have less crime than you had in cities where it isn't.
I'm okay.
And so I don't think everybody's now going to go get a gun and carry the gun with them everywhere they go. In Maryland in particular, you have to be trained. You're still going to have certain constraints in getting a license for a gun. And we're already in the Wild Wild West with people, the way they're shooting, with these illegal guns.
Though my major issue with guns is, I don't mind you arming people. I would love, we're going to be armed. My thing is how you permanently disenfranchise those who have been formally convicted of a felony. Permanently. Like, this isn't, voting rights, we went from permanent disenfranchisement to now being able to vote as long as you're not locked up. Why is somebody who's been convicted of a felony never allowed to ever carry a firearm again in their life? That felony might not even have anything to do with
right. Yeah. I don't
understand.
You're right. I don't understand that either.
Like,
well, I think with the women thing, I'm gonna quote it best. I hope I say this correctly. And he said it best. And since a man can't make one, he has no right to tell a woman when and where to create one. Tupac Shakur.
Tupac now?
That was there you go. Just to get that point across.
And then on the other side, though, and this is just in general, this is my progressive, my moderate person thinking that I am. First of all, you have a lot of kids in foster care that don't have places in homes. You have a lot of abusive issues happening within homes, but also on the flip side, this should be also a wake up call. If we can, and I hope we can change it, where we individuals, if it's not incest or rape or even a situation where you want to bring a child into this world and you discover that something is wrong, but we also have to become responsible individuals, male and female.
Yeah. And see, here's
And
the problem I have with making the clause for rape and incest and stuff as a reason to have an abortion. Because what you're going to start to have is women who are in relationships who then become, say they want an abortion, can't get one unless it's rape. They're going to falsely start accusing men of rape only to be able to get that abortion. So
I don't think that's going to happen. Well, but now the way that the law is, depending on where you live, what state, you can't. You're going to still have to have that child down in Texas and places like that, Alabama. So
right.
I doubt if that's going to happen. But I'm glad that the corporate community is stepping up, where Amazon and other businesses are going to provide funding for you to go to that state and even go and move and work in that state that allows for abortion. It's just this. I'm like Gibson,
I
Professor
get.
Gibson. We need to maybe increase the number of Supreme Court judges. I don't know.
I,
It's
I
just
I agree with what you said, but I think that it's good that these other companies like Amazon are doing what they do. But let's dig a little deeper. What about the people who created this law, these laws and judgments? It's like we need some of them people out of office. And
yeah.
the sad part is we complain, we complain, we complain, and no one's voting. No one is paying attention specifically to the local elections. Why? And they are the first ones to say, well, gas prices are this high and blah blah blah. Wait, but you're not doing anything.
Well, but just think about it. Folks didn't like Hillary Clinton, but when Hillary was running against
Mm-hmm.
Trump, the issue wasn't about Hillary. The issue was about the Supreme Court. But
Right.
people couldn't make that connection.
Well,
Mm.
I think if you increase the Supreme Court, the problem is going to be is just like it is now, right? It's not if you get a Republican in there or conservative who appoints conservatives at a time, then you'll just have more conservatives than nine. So instead of 6-9 majority, 6-3 majority, you'll have an 11-5 majority. What's the difference? To me, there's no difference if you create 2 or 3 more seats.
Yeah.
It's all about the appointment process. The problem is judges should not be political pawns. They should not use their political leanings in their decision. And it's hard to separate your political beliefs. But at the end of the day, you're a judge. You're supposed to look and interpret law, not
Right.
create law. And that's
Well,
the problem.
the last two Supreme Court interviews that Trump had for those individuals he selected. I mean, come on, it was political, and they weren't straightforward and being honest.
Right. Exactly.
But, I mean, even like the Berger Court, the Black Court, and even the Rehnquist Court. These were all chief judges, chief justices, who 2 out of the 3 were appointed by Republicans. They were Republican dominated, meaning a Republican president appointed the Republican majority. This is when Thurgood Marshall was on the bench back in the 80s and the 70s and the 60s. And they had a very active and really more liberal leaning or liberal active justices. So we saw out of that Brown versus Board of Education, Roe v. Wade, a lot of these decisions that would probably appease most Americans, especially the liberal, were done by courts that still had a conservative majority. They just weren't being swayed by this political ideology that we see today of this extreme far right. But if you do your research and look, those courts were Nixon dominated. Nixon, I think, appointed 3 out of the 9 justices. The other 2 or 3 were done by Republican presidents, and yet they weren't swayed by ideology. They actually interpreted the law, and that's what we got. We got fair decisions that weren't, swayed by political ideology. Today, I think it's the opposite. It's just the opposite. They're being swayed.
Yeah, I agree.
But one thing we didn't mention was a case, Vega versus Teco. People who don't realize it was a 6-3 majority dealing with Miranda rights. Miranda rights is that you have the right to remain silent, blah, blah, blah. It was something that was put in through Arizona years ago from the courts that a person must be read their Miranda rights. This decision doesn't negate having to get your Miranda rights written to you. You still had to get them read to you. This does, though, an individual wasn't Mirandized. He was brought to court based off of a statement that he gave. He was interviewed in a hospital and supposedly touched a patient. He wrote a statement kind of apologizing to that person. Then they ended up charging him, taking him to court. He got found not guilty. He sued them, the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department, because they did not Mirandize him. The lower courts agreed with his lawsuit under Section 1983, providing a cause of action against a person acting under color of state of law. The Supreme Court overruled that. So now no one can sue somebody for not being Mirandized. You cannot sue any police department for not Mirandizing the individual at all. So that decision is going to have some implication. And there's another one that a guy on death row in Georgia only has one way of execution, and that is lethal injection. This individual said, I don't want that. I want to be shot to death. I want the firing squad. And there is a constitutional mandate that an individual, if there is reprieve, that they have multiple, that state, or there's another state that does executions, that state can then pick it up. He sued under that and won, actually. And so that now the decision has to be made. Will Georgia be able to institute that, or will they have to redo their laws to institute a firing squad as well as part of the execution?
So he wanted to be shot dead versus injected.
He wanted a firing squad instead of lethal injection.
Woo.
But they only have one way of execution in Georgia. But there's other states that do firing squads. So he was able to compel the courts to say, hey, you allowed this under the provisions that had existed under a previous decision by the court. So the courts couldn't reverse themselves because that decision wasn't not too long ago. It was made by this court. So they didn't look stupid trying to reverse themselves. So they ended up letting it. But the problem exists is Georgia still has only one mandated way of killing somebody, and that's lethal injection. So now the next process is, what will Georgia do? Will their legislature institute a new way of, killing somebody, or how they handle that moving forward? So that's an interesting case as well. There's a lot of cases that I read that I'm in love with the Supreme Court. I've always been in love with law. I always thought I was going to be a lawyer before I got all my convictions in court. But when I went to court, you thought I was the born brown somewhere.
Well, it's never too late. It's not too late to be a lawyer.
The level of charges I got, trust me, it's too late. They're not. See, when you have a felony conviction, you would have to get the bar would have to grant you reprieve in order to get that law license. Based off my record, ain't nowhere in the world that they're gonna give me a law license.
Wow.
I would give you a chance.
Yeah, why wouldn't they?
Because of my record. Like I didn't.
Well, okay, but maybe because of your record, you might be even a better attorney than someone who's wet behind the ears.
Yep.
I think I would. I think I'd give Ivan Bates a run for his money, but
And by the way, speaking of which, I saw the commercial today too.
Oh, damn,
Mayor.
I forgot. I was going to.
Oh, you saw the commercial?
Yes.
I was make the
with Mary Miller and I.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very good.
I remembered after I finished my walk and I had to rush here to get ready. This guy from Fox 45 called me. He texted me. And I should have texted him back to say, you know what? I'm not giving you an interview because y'all are not, you're not fair in your reporting. I'm
Say
not
that
wasting my
again.
time.
At
Huh?
all.
At
Uh-uh.
all. Not
Now,
at
mind
all.
you, they didn't cover the Baltimore Sun endorsement of Ivan. They didn't cover you and Mary, even though the Baltimore Brewers, so everybody else picked it up.
Well, I think Fox wanted. That's what he wanted. He was doing a story today on that. I'm trying
Well,
to
the only
look to
reason,
see who
here's the
was it
only
that
reason
called
though.
me.
Here's the only
Huh?
reason. They ignored George. This is the only reason they called you today. Because they picked up a story. They reran a story about all these so-called people endorsing Thyroid. Doc Cheatham and Willie Brown from
The,
South Carolina, San Francisco, the former mayor over there. All these low-level people and tried to act like that was new. And when we sent it to Ivan, and Ivan's campaign said, hey, y'all can't, this is old. Y'all can't make it like it's new, and y'all ignoring X, Y, and Z. So the reporter called and he said, okay, and that's why they reached out to you to try to, in an effort of fairness, to try to
Yeah,
balance it.
Tim Swift from Fox reached
Yep.
out.
Yeah, he was the one who did the story today this morning on Thyroid, as you know, with all these people.
Oh, gotcha,
So they
gotcha.
got caught with their hand in the cookie jar, violating the FCC violations again. And so
say
they
that one
know
more
Ivan
time,
to sue
Hassan.
it, but huh?
Say it one more time. They got what?
They got caught with their hand in the cookie jar, violating the FCC equal time protection. So, and they
Thank you
know,
for repeating it.
yeah, when Ivan has sued the Baltimore Sun over that before, so they knew. I was like, oh, let's backtrack that. Let's give. But let's be honest, they followed Thyroid around campaign, and they didn't air that 2-3 times already. They still ain't.
Well, wait a minute. It got aired twice because if they do a story on Fridays, Sunday is a slow night, and generally they'll repeat. Most stations will repeat. That's why Friday's always good because they end up repeating it over the weekend. That
Yeah,
only
but they
because
repeat
it's
Thyroid stuff over anyway. Let's see if they repeat
But
Ivan.
see, but
but
isn't it?
Ivan's doing his on a Thursday.
Even if he did it on the Friday, they wouldn't
It,
repeat it.
but we don't know because he's not doing it on Friday. But I've already followed that for years. When it's a story on a Friday, they'll usually repeat it over the weekend because usually news is slow on the weekend.
But even if they do that, if they repeat something from him, they have to repeat something from the other candidates,
Well,
and
they should.
that
Yeah,
still
they
falls
should.
under on being unfair, and they
Well,
know
let's
it.
see what happens. They're following him on Thursday, so let's see when it films.
Then they
If it
always got this
airs,
poll. Who do you support for state's attorney?
yeah, him
And stop.
76%,
Right. He
and,
always got
and
99.
Ivan 1%.
Right. He got 99% for a long time. Then it was 95. Now they tried to drop his down to 76 to make it more fair with Marilyn Mosby at
Oh Lord!
26%. Like, get the hell out of here, man.
What
Like,
was Maryland's? What was her numbers?
she was like 22% all of a
And
sudden.
they had Ivan as 1%.
1%. Come on, cut it out, man. I swear they just put up numbers. They never show who actually votes in these polls and where the number of votes. They just throw up these numbers and people, they expect people, and a lot of people do.
Well, but keep in mind when they do the poll, who knows if he has people on speed dial to say call in, call in. I mean, you don't
They
know
never
that.
tell you when to call in. There's never
Yeah,
a
I
poll.
thought they. Oh, you're right. You're right.
They just say
Sometimes they do.
a recent poll says that 70. Okay, when was the poll taken? Come on, I'm telling you.
And who was the poll?
Donnie used to do this all the time. Throw a poll up on our sites. You can if 3 people voted and 2 out of the 3 supported Thyroid, that gives them right there 66%. You see what I'm saying? So you might
Yep.
have everybody at Fox just vote real quick. And oh, by the way, Thyroid has 99% of the vote. Of course you did. Because 9 out of the 10 of the employees voted. Come on.
And
So
voters are not
have you
dumb.
seen that? Have you seen that commercial with Katie O'Malley?
Yep.
This recent one
Yep.
about Anthony Brown has no experience.
Experience in.
It's true though. It's true. He don't have no. I didn't understand why he was running for attorney general in the first place. You ain't no
And
real.
he could.
You don't have no.
Yeah.
Come on, man. Like, but here's my thing. This is what I don't understand, Madam Mayor. You're a woman in a state with no female representation in Congress or statewide. Why have they not made an appeal to women that we need female representation in this state, especially with the Supreme Court and their decision? They have never made the appeal to women who are the majority. 67% of the Democratic majority are women.
Right. Well, just think about it. When Donna Edwards ran for Senate, our folks here, the chosen one was Chris Van Hollen.
Yeah.
Instead of getting behind her, I didn't understand that.
Yeah.
The same way everybody's getting behind, what's her name? For controller.
Brooke Lehrman.
Brooke Lehrman. It's like, and I think she's a nice person.
But I like the guy we had on.
Yeah,
the guy that was
qualified.
Right. I love his commercials. I don't know why.
Well, Tim is experienced
Right.
at being a controller, but it's like everybody. It's like certain people are chosen, and that's who everybody gets behind.
Right. And it shouldn't be that way. It's you look at their track record, what they can bring to the table, not because of a name recognition, not because they know somebody or really tight with somebody. You don't vote that way. I wish people would just stop that.
That happened when if it was a woman's seat that we lost when U.S. Senator Barbara Mikulski left, Barbara and the Democratic Party should have got behind a woman, and they didn't.
Just like some of these other senators who have top positions, and I heard Gibson say that a few of the seats we're trying to hold on to. So what are those people who are in the seats currently? What are they doing? What are they doing to bring younger ones in that could possibly continue the run? Nobody thinks that way.
It needs to be a term limit, period, across the board, at the federal level, state level, and local.
See, I don't believe that, because I believe elections are term limits. If you're tired of them, get them out of there. But you need seniority in certain, especially in Congress and the legislature. You need certain seniority. Otherwise, you're going to have a whole bunch of new people running around not knowing what to do because they don't really know the rules.
But for Congress people, they have to run every 2 years. First of all, I think that they should not have to run every 2 years. So I'm not saying that, it's that you have one term. I'm saying that, but what's the issue with 3 terms or 4 terms, depending on what the levels are?
Now that's something I could possibly get with, because I agree. You don't need no lifetime. They don't need to be like Supreme Court justices, no lifetime appointments.
Right. Exactly.
These people, man, they just there to collect a paycheck. Why easy and fool, man. But
same thing at the local level. I was pushing for a term limit at the city level.
Hey, me too. Well, yeah, and our mayor doesn't even.
When we were doing charter changes, I was trying to do that, but I couldn't get at that time. I couldn't get those folks to support that.
Bill Henry put it in too, and they laughed him out of City Hall when he was on the council. He tried to put in term limits for the council with the mayor, the council president. Man, they threw that stuff in the trash can so fast. They said, hell no, we ain't doing that. Yeah. Come on, man. Them people ain't going to go against that.
I wish I had the patience. I would run for something if I had the patience, but I ain't got the patience. But some of the stuff it's a lot of the stuff that I see that I do not like. But again, if I had the patience, I would do it.
What do you think about the governor's race?
You never know. You might gain the patience.
True.
Latest poll in the governor's race has Francho at about 16 or 18%.
16 and West at 14 and Tom Perez at 14.
Yeah, Perez and West are
tight. It's getting tight. The 3 of them is tight.
Now here's my question, because and I've said this on the show plenty of times. I'm a big fan of and friend of Tom Perez. I support Tom 100%. But when I look at all these, like you said, all the chosen ones, all of a sudden, every congressperson in the state, county execs, now you got the Senate president, the speaker, all getting behind Wes Moore all of a sudden, right? My question is, do you think all those people are going to get behind him that are the Democratic establishment and he's not going to win? Like, to me, that's like they're setting itself up like, it don't matter who votes, it's who counts the votes. We count the votes. We're going to make sure this guy wins. You see what I'm saying? Like, when all those people of the party establishment, the machine, get behind one candidate, that worries me. That tells me that the fix is in. Just me.
I don't think the fix is in because you have 30% of people who are undecided. And I don't and keep in mind, people are not necessarily going to go with somebody because of who they are endorsed by. So
that I agree. But again, it's not about who votes, who counts the votes. And because I know Sheila Dixon won 2 elections for mayor in 2016.
I can't agree with you on that. And you weren't
don't
even
got
here.
to. I know it.
You weren't here. You weren't in here. You left and went on vacation. You weren't
I
even
was
here.
in Vegas. No, but I knew it. And what I said when I left, we organized a committee of lawyers.
Well, no.
Before I left,
We analyzed. We had attorneys involved in that. I'm telling you, I know what happened.
Yeah.
At the 2
They
districts.
stole the election.
That didn't happen. First one, yeah.
Brandon did not get 9 out of 10 white voters in the first district with all
The first and the 5th.
He did
Now
not
there
get
could
9
be some
out of
shaky
10
stuff in
votes.
the 5th because I understand that Yitzi's good friend is a deputy director in the Board of Elections. But now the first one, yeah, no ifs, ands, or buts.
No, she definitely stole that. Paid
And
people.
you frozen too.
Who? I'm not
On
frozen.
my screen, you're frozen.
You're not frozen on mine. Both, I can hear both.
Yeah, it's weird. I can hear him, but it's weird. It's weird how things went today.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to look for new technology. I love this platform, but sometimes we keep having some technical, and that's just technology, though.
And that's the reason why I wanted to start using it for something else.
Huh?
I said that you're the reason why I wanted to start using it, because when I talked to you a couple of weeks ago about this app, and I thought it was kind of cool when I did more research.
Yeah. Oh, it's definitely a good app. There's a lot of stuff that we don't utilize only because it's hard for me to do all of it and still kind of co-host and do all that. But there's a lot of platforms, a lot of things, apps and stuff to use in this. That's a great platform for online. Again, technology is what technology is. It's not going to be perfect, just like humans.
Sound like a politician.
Yeah, sure does.
Well, I learned from you. I learned from the best. Talk about sure does. I hear that. Speaking of which, I didn't know this, but coming up this Thursday, there will be a candidates forum for those running for Board of Education. 3 of the candidates we had on last week. National Action Network is going to have it at Arena Players from 6:30 to 8 o'clock this Thursday.
Will it be live?
30th. I'm going to try to live stream it for them. I just found out. I didn't know I was supposed to be a panelist.
Oh, wow.
I hope they have the seats fixed in there.
Yeah, you and me both. Well, yeah, the ones in the thing. I don't know. But that's supposed to happen this Thursday from National Action Network. So just wanted to throw that out there. Just found out about that. So it's going to be interesting. And then, last but not least, I just found out as we were on here that the Michigan Supreme Court overturned a lower court ruling.
Yeah, I heard about that.
3 former
crap.
state officials and their involvement in the Flint water crisis.
And didn't 12 die?
Wait a minute. So what happened?
So the Supreme Court voted unanimously with 1 abstention to return the cases against former state officials Nick Lyon, Nancy Peeler, and Richard Byrd. Of course, one of the 5 as well was former Michigan Governor Rick Snyder, to return it to the lower courts in terms of their charges of willful neglect in the Flint, Michigan water crisis. The 3 appealed it based off of what they felt was a judge going out of his way, Judge David Newblatt, who they say served as a one-man grand jury and considered the evidence behind closed doors and issued indictments against the defendants. This is what the ruling of the high courts were. So basically, the the judge in this case, New Black, basically served these indictments against these 5 individuals. One of them being former Governor Rick Snyder. The higher courts rejected those indictments based off an appeal from these individuals, saying that the judge had no authority to issue the indictments as a quote unquote one-man grand jury, that he should have served these charges up to the grand jury to receive the indictments in regards to their involvement in the Flint, Michigan water crisis. So now it's being returned to the lower courts to see, the fate of these 5 individuals, including the former governor. Interesting.
Wow.
They're gonna get off.
Right. That's what these are the things that I was talking about that actually piss me off, because it's so many problems in so many different areas. There's only one of me.
Well, that's why you gotta focus, Daniel son, on what's your main priority concerns, and then focus on that. And I'm telling
Yeah.
you, the courts is one of them. I urge everybody to get this book, The Nine. This is one of the books that are like my Bible when it comes to the Supreme Court. It's The Secret World of the Supreme Court by Jeffrey Tubin.
The Nine. Okay, I'll get it.
Past opinions, things that go into the mindset of these justices, how they come about. And that's why I always say Republicans do it the best. Democrats fail to do this, and Trump did it better than most in appointing federal judges and judges across the board in these lower courts, because the Supreme Court only comes about every time a justice either retires or dies. That's only 9 seats. But the courts end up deciding so much, and they won't even get to the Supreme Court level if they never get through the lower court levels. So if you keep appointing these justices on these lower courts, they have what's called conservative activism and judicial activism. And what they did since the Reagan years is realize that they can start using cases that they put before the courts purposely to get all the way to the level of the Supreme Court when they have a conservative majority, in order to get the decision and outcomes that they want. They do this on purpose, and they've been doing it for quite some time, and the Democrats just never seem to have grasped that concept, or they just never do it the way Republicans have done it for quite some time now. And until they learn that process and get strategic like them, we're going to continue to see things like this happen in America and on this court level, unfortunately. But I mean, look what the Senate did with when Obama had the appointment process in the Supreme Court, and they held that up all the way until he got out of office, until they got their right president. Democrats would have never done something like that.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah. Never mind. It's just sometimes it makes me question me being a Democrat, because half of them.
Was it today they announced over 1 million Democrats switched their party affiliation?
To what?
Oh, really?
And now I don't know if it was all Republicans or independent and Republican, but that's alarming. Very alarming.
You said a lot of Democrats were switched over, or
1 million Democrats. It was
wow.
something I heard earlier on I think I was listening to a talk show.
More than 1 million voters switched to the GOP, raising alarm.
Because look at what's going on. Student loans. It affects me. It's like Biden that is affecting me, and the fact that they can't sign a bill to protect us, but they can for everyone else.
Well, I have to disagree with you on the student loan, because I had student loans and I just had to pay my student loan. And no offense, but they're gonna go back and retroact me with my student loan money.
Well, here's what
my parents couldn't afford to send me to college, so I had student loans.
I am paying them because I was the one who went to school to do it, and I feel like it's if I'm struggling to pay my bills, specifically that one, and any kind of leeway I can get, I want.
So I thought if you had some financial challenges due to jobs and blah 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 blah, because I remember one time I did back in the day, and I was able to I don't know what it was that I was able to do. It was something I was able to do. Put it on hold. I mean, of course, it's going to acquire cure interest and all, but shoot, I paid on that forever.
I'm still paying on it forever.
Here's what's interesting. I just got this update from our friend from the program, Betsy Gardner, who just sent it to me. Um, where can you see it? You see that on the thing?
Yeah.
This vote for
I don't see nothing.
the cent. So it says vote. I don't know why you don't see it. These names, these 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 names, 6 Jewish names for Central Committee. That's in the Baltimore Jewish Life .com in their publication. Now it's being sent out, I guess, from Yitzi, the councilman, and his individuals. We talked about this on the show before.
Yeah,
but
we did.
Interesting to me that they say 7 people from our very own community will be on the Baltimore City ballot in July. At least the 6 Central Committee members and Delegate Delia Attar. They never say Sandy Rosenberg anywhere in it. Interesting.
Wow. The fact that they won, what you just said, the fact that they communicate like that to one another to make sure that they get that vote. And here it is, we don't do any of that kind of stuff.
Well, that's supposed to be what the Afro should have been for. The Afro is
right, exactly. Hassan,
getting all that.
That's the truth. That's
definitely ain't what they used to be. You know, and I don't blame them. The Jewish Times and whatever, they supposed to do what they supposed to do.
Right, exactly.
Right? I was just more shocked that Sandy Rosenberg was not listed as one of the candidates on the ballot for him. And it's what I've heard throughout the past few weeks and months is that they're concentrating on Delia Attar being reelected and these 6 individuals on the Central Committee.
Well, you can drive around West Baltimore of the 41st district, and you can tell based on where her huge signs are who owns those properties.
Right.
And off of on Gwynn Falls and Garrison, you know a Jewish person owns that raggedy property apartment complex that should be fixed for those people living in it. You can tell who owns them based on these huge signs she has.
You know what's interesting? Right across Cattle Corner from that raggedy apartment building, there's a vacant lot, Gwynn Falls and Garrison, right? That an African American owns, brother who owns Downtown Culture Art and them. They put up Bilal sign there, right? And
I saw that.
Every week, that sign gets torn down. They took one of our people saw them take a sledgehammer to it, and every time that sign goes down, it goes right back up. But only in that location. We got signs all across the 41st. It's that one thing, and then we realized across the street what that apartment was and why that one sign kept coming down. But you're right. It's interesting. But look at
Mayor, can you
don't see Tony Bridges or Sandy with no signs up or stuff across the district.
Tony Bridges, I have a sign out in front of my house for him. My neighbor has Bilal's, but Tony Bridges is around in Hunting Ridge.
Mayor?
Yes.
I think you should repeat what you just said because I think that is so very important that people tend to forget. When you said there are signs in front of pretty much houses that look like eyesores, and yet they can't come around for anything else, but they can make sure signs are set up in front of there to have the people that they want in office.
Oh yeah, you can tell who owns those properties.
Sad. And people don't even pay attention to stuff like that, and they need to.
They should.
And if I see another through commercial.
Next week we got former delegate Bilal Ali coming on the show, as well as a gentleman who's doing some great things in the community, former victim of gun violence himself, who has a nonprofit. JJ, you want to tell the family what it is?
I didn't hear what you said.
The gentleman coming on next week, who's nonprofit owner.
William William Tip. He's better known as Tipper. He's a frat brother of mine. Has a lot to speak about. Very fine brother as far as what he does in the community. He does a lot in the community, and out of the violence he went through is all of the positive things he's doing after all of that as well.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I saw the piece you had on him. It looks very interesting.
Just
Very
got a
much
text
so.
message from Pro-Choice Maryland Action. Marylanders should know that 6 Democrats in our General Assembly who are up for re-election voted against the Abortion Care Access Act of 2022. And the first name on there, Delia Tar. Wow.
Wow.
Oh, interesting. Really?
Interesting.
Woo. Somebody needs to put that. Who sent that to you?
It's a tweet from Pro-Choice Maryland Action that was just texted over to me.
Oh wow, they need to put that out. They need to get that out.
Right.
Yeah. It's her.
Particularly in the 41st district.
Huh?
Who were the other 2 Democrats? Particularly in the 41st.
No, she's the only one of 6. There's 6 Democrats who voted against it. She's the only one from Baltimore City. The other ones are Ann Haley from Montgomery County, Shanika Henson from over, I think, Anne Arundel, Cheryl Landis from Prince George's, Mary Ann Lasanti, who's she, Hartford County, I think, and Geraldine Valentino Smith, who I think
Well,
is.
they need to get that out in the 41st in particular.
Well, I think that they're sending a mailer and stuff. I heard about this a couple of days ago that it's being spread that she was one of the ones that voted against the abortion access, which shocked.
Put it on social media.
Well, this was a tweet. And
TikTok, Twitter, all of it. Because it reaches more people that way.
shocked me that she would, but I don't know. Maybe from religious standpoint, she felt she wasn't going to vote for it.
Yeah, well, most likely as an Orthodox Jew, not that I'm going to characterize all Jewish people, but probably not.
But that could hurt her, though. That could very well, especially if that's put out in the mail or whatever, sent to voters across the district. That is a very huge topic right now. Something that I wouldn't want to be on that side of the aisle for. Tell you that. We'll see, though. 3 weeks from now, we'll have the answers to a lot of questions, hopefully, if they actually have the results in. Things are done the way they should be. We ain't got to wait weeks for the outcomes.
Well, but they're not going to count the mail-in ballots
till 8 o'clock.
So you're not going to know that night.
Well, it depends. So they don't start till 8 o'clock that election night on count mail. But here's the thing: if early voting in election day and a person has a wide margin of victory, you're going to know quite a few, I think, elections across the board.
I think a lot of them are going to be very close.
Unless they're close. And I agree, But it also depends on how many mail-in ballots. So statewide, I think the governor's race we might not know because it's going to be close. The mail-in ballots statewide will probably be numbered. But in some of the local delegates and senators, I don't think it's going to be enough mail-in ballots to be counted from a wide margin unless they're very close, races. State's attorney might be up for grabs. That might be one that we don't know by election night. Who knows? It depends on how many. But so far, I think it was like 30-some thousand for Baltimore City requested mail-in ballots couple last week. So, depends on how many requested between now and then. It'll be interesting to see, though. I'll tell you what. And on July 20th, we'll be here talking about all that. The results, the failures, who won, who lost, who's running for mayor in 2024, Sheila Dixon. So we're going to talk about all.
You know what? Don't even go there.
I got to say it at least once a week.
No.
But Mayor, you can't blame him. I mean, even though
leave it be.
Hey, I
tries.
Wait what people are telling me, asking me, is she going to do it or what? We got to get going.
And just in case they didn't hear the name, William Tipper Thomas III. He'll be on next Tuesday.
Okay.
All right.
Great.
Well, family, we'll be back next Tuesday, 6 to 8 p.m. as always. And remember, new promise begins with a new day. Therefore, the promise of tomorrow is greater than that of yesterday. Good night, family.
Good night.
Good night.
Yoo-hoo! I'll make you famous. We work for Mr. Tunstall as regulators. We regulate any stealing of his property. We're damn good, too. You can't be any geek off the street. Gotta be handy.